Hello, dear friends, I'm here with you, Sofya Dorinskaya, President of the International Bureau for Human Rights in Mental Health and Director of the Sofya Dorinskaya Center for Medical Information. Today, I will tell you what your psychiatrists don't tell you when they prescribe psychoactive substances. And today, I will tell you what you will face when you want to stop using psychoactive substances. Well, to begin with, I'll say that drugs as a phenomenon are actually familiar to the human body, so to speak. The body really does produce its own drugs, but in very small amounts. They're called endorphins. And for example, they are produced when you eat, that feeling of tranquility, relaxation, and a bit of drowsiness. A good mood is a natural mechanism that the body has, and biologically active substances are indeed involved in it, these very same biologically produced drugs. That is precisely why, when you go to a psychiatrist with certain problems and the psychiatrist prescribes synthetic drugs, all psychoactive substances, let me say again, any psychoactive substance that is created and intended to alter a person's mental state is in essence a drug by its very action. And it doesn't matter where you got it, from a back alley or from a pharmacy with a doctor's prescription. Changing the place where it is dispensed does not change the nature of the substance. So when you start taking this substance, it becomes integrated into your metabolism, your body accepts it and restructures its biochemistry to adapt to this externally introduced poison. It's important to understand that for the body, psychoactive substances are essentially toxins from the outside. For example, the body is supposed to produce adrenaline in certain dangerous situations. For example, if someone attacks you, during danger a person releases adrenaline. This is the so-called fight or flight response. And when this adrenaline release system is working, if a person is strong, they can fight back. If they realize they can't, they run away. And adrenaline is the substance involved in this process. Now, look, when drugs become integrated into metabolic processes, for example, this system gets destroyed, this very adrenaline system. And when a person is in danger, adrenaline is not produced in the necessary amount, or its production is somehow blocked, and the person apathetically experiences their stressful situations. In fact, it is considered that the person has been helped. So in a stressful situation, they no longer produce more adrenaline. And that's just how it is, yes. Now, for example, a person decides to quit using psychoactive substances and they stop. After some time, the body activates. Since there is no longer this external poison blocking the function, the body activates this adrenaline system again. But you perfectly understand that the body starts activating it unevenly, because this mechanism that the body had developed is now broken, and the body needs to somehow readjust it in a new way. And naturally, it readjusts it in fits and starts. For example, you're standing in a store buying bread surrounded by loaves of bread. The only person you're interacting with is the saleswoman. And suddenly you get a sharp rush of adrenaline, your heart is pounding, out of nowhere you suddenly feel some aggression, you break out in a cold sweat, your legs go weak, panic sets in, terrible panic, even though nothing is actually happening. On the outside there's nothing at all. No reason why this reaction should be happening to you. But what's actually happening is just one simple thing. Simply put, your body has woken up. This situation is somewhat reminiscent of the period when a person is going through puberty, when the hormonal system, specifically the sex hormones, is being adjusted. And if you remember how you felt then, or if you have children, you can observe it. During this period, there's something similar, some hormone surges, some panic attacks. Suddenly, a person becomes tearful for no apparent reason, or suddenly becomes aggressive, and no one understands at all what's going on, not even the person themselves. They have no idea what's happening to them. And to be honest, not very smart ones. Parents at this point start dragging their children to psychiatrists, and psychiatrists suppress these reactions with their pills. People with a stronger nervous system understand that you just need to wait, you need to give the body time to adjust this system. You have to understand that, for example, when you learn to drive a car, you don't just get behind the wheel right away and start driving. How many bumpers will you dent? How many clutches will you burn out? How many nerves will you take from your poor gray-haired instructor, and so on? You are also learning to control this machine. When a person goes through puberty and the body starts adjusting the hormonal system, there are also some strange reactions. Let's get back to discontinuing medications. What psychiatrists don't tell you is about the reactions you will experience as a result of stopping them. These very substances, since psychoactive substances destroy the body's regulatory system, the nervous regulatory system, they damage the neurotransmitter system. These are the substances that transmit nerve impulses. They severely damage the endocrine system because this system is directly connected to neuroregulation. And when you stop taking psychoactive substances, after a while this system in the body starts working again and very unpleasant reactions begin, especially if you, and this is very distressing. First of all, if you are someone who is on your own, someone impatient who can't pull themselves together, brace themselves and say, I will get through this period. On top of that, there is also what's called withdrawal from these synthetic drugs. It can manifest as aching muscles. The terrible side effects are withdrawal, sleep disturbances from which a person can literally lose their mind. Very unpleasant gastrointestinal symptoms, meaning it's either diarrhea, constipation, vomiting, or belching. Indigestion, anything at all. So these are the kinds of reactions. And you really need to fully grasp and comprehend that if you agree to take this specific psychoactive pill, a medication designed to target your brain chemistry and relieve your symptoms, this might lead to complications for some unknown reason. Perhaps due to a severely disrupted endocrine system that is currently out of balance. From the very beginning, then when you want to stop taking the psychoactive pill, because you do need to stop taking it, the most objective reason is that neurotropic poisons lead to dementia, neurotropic poisons lead to impotence, neurotropic poisons lead to apathy, neurotropic poisons lead to memory loss and the loss of work skills. In other words, your life gradually starts to fall apart. So, if you find that you simply can't withstand the initial physiological reactions of your systems becoming increasingly unstable and unbalanced, when you take a psychoactive pill, then when you eventually decide to quit, the withdrawal symptoms will be dozens, if not hundreds, of times stronger than what you first experienced. And you will need much more strength personally, or if you are parents, you will need much more strength to cope with your child's insomnia, to endure sudden aggression, which after psychoactive substances may become completely uncontrollable, even if before taking these substances, the person was able to restrain themselves. And if he had aggression, the person in general could somehow restrain himself from truly catastrophic actions. Murder. Statistics show that after using psychoactive substances, people may kill either themselves or others, and so on. In other words, statistics indicate that the fundamental instincts of a person are destroyed after using psychoactive substances. How can we help you? How do we actually help people who want to get off psychoactive substances? First, all psychoactive substances destroy vitamins, minerals, and trace elements in the body. All of them. That is the essence of their action. I'll tell you more. There are so-called people whom psychiatrists call therapy resistant, and as a rule they are referred for electroshock therapy. So when you start looking into their history, in these people who are resistant to psychoactive substances, you find severe vitamin and mineral imbalances beforehand. Consider, for example, the case of a specific person who for several long years, through consistent self-medication, regularly used very strong diuretics, which are, in other words, extremely powerful water pills. Diuretics, including even furosemide. Furosemide is such a a very powerful diuretic that is used in intensive care settings. You have to monitor the mineral levels in the blood. It's administered only with saline solution, but that's not the point. So this person wanting to get rid of some swelling or to lose weight and so on, self-prescribed and used these diuretics for several years. As a result, he ended up developing hallucinatory symptoms because these are symptoms of a disrupted vitamin and mineral balance. In other words, the person simply flushed out all their minerals and related vitamins, and naturally they started experiencing hallucinatory symptoms. Naturally, their sleep was disrupted, they were put in a psychiatric hospital and were given psychoactive substances, which only work if a person has at least a relatively normal level of vitamins and minerals. Naturally, in this person's case, these substances had no effect on them. As expected, these psychoactive substances ultimately gave the person an electric shock. That's fate, as they say. So that's what I'm getting at. What do we do? How do we help people who want to get off psychoactive substances? The first thing we help you with is to replenish deficiencies of vitamins, minerals, and microelements. Because if you just take it and refuse, or there is a reduction scheme, someone does something, refuses, then at the level of existing deficiencies, these withdrawal, as I said, withdrawal, this is the inclusion of endocrine systems and so on, endocrine systems, they are so unpredictable, the pain is so serious. The pain is so severe that some people simply cannot bear it. And it is much, let's say, easier to endure when you have replenished your vitamin, mineral, and micronutrient deficiencies. And then, little by little, based on reports, when you are doing something yourself, we look at the levels of vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients. But I can tell you, you will need a tremendous amount of courage. You and your relatives, of course, if you have relatives who support you, you are lucky. But if you are surrounded by relatives who are absolutely unwilling to tolerate it, none of your outbursts of anger, none of your tantrums, none of your sleepless nights, none of your hurtful words, which sometimes do get said, this is life, and oh boy. If the reaction is, let's urgently shove our relative into a psychiatric hospital, then of course things become even more difficult. And the last thing I would like to say, of course, when the situation has already reached the point it has, we have to proceed from the circumstances as they are. But honestly, I want to address everyone who has not yet reached the point of seeing psychiatrists, who is still thinking about it. To the parents who are being told that their child is somehow not like the others, they really should see psychiatrists. You should come to us and take your test for deficiencies, because if we could rewind the situation, because psychopathology, various mental manifestations, and the cases seen in psychiatric clinics, they are all essentially based on, in fact, they all stem from severe deficiencies in essential vitamins, vital minerals, and necessary trace elements. Sometimes these critical nutritional deficiencies are passed directly from a mother to her child during development. This underlying cause is often overlooked in modern clinical practice. We already have such cases, we have families like this. Parents go through this together with their children. And we can trace, for example, that the mother has a mineral deficiency. The child has the same mineral deficiency. And this mineral deficiency is even more pronounced in the child. And the child has already been taking antipsychotics for several years. But in reality, it's a mineral deficiency. And now we are helping these people. So all of this is initially based on disorders, on deficiency-related disorders. The first thing a person experiences is emotional suffering when something is wrong in the body. And when you go to doctors, they can't find anything, but you already feel unwell. So when you already feel unwell, does that mean you have a warning sign? A deficiency condition? But again, the truth is that you can't fix this just with diet or by simply advising someone to take vitamins. Because let me repeat, the entire system is incredibly intricate and multifaceted. The system, it's very much like if you've seen that famous legal thriller starring Anthony Hopkins called Fracture, where he plays a meticulous structural engineer who meticulously planned to kill his wife. But his professional background was actually in building and testing airplanes. And he built these big, interesting systems with marbles rolling around. I think the movie is called Fracture. There were marbles rolling and they followed a very precise pattern. Take a look. It's there, right at the beginning in the very first scenes. So in reality, the system of vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients is very precise, but it's also complex. When some kind of deficiency occurs, just like in that system where the marbles roll, changes immediately start happening and some third symptom appears on the surface. But you need to have a very clear understanding of this system in order to dig down and find out where the essence lies, what everything is based on. I hope I was able to help you today with this video. I understand there were a lot of words, but I tried to outline this whole system for you. And its essence is very simple. You feel bad in the first place because there are deficiencies. When you try to feed your bad feelings with psychoactive substances, which simply cut off and destroy nerve impulses, and you kind of feel good. But these psychoactive substances lead you, both as a person and physically, to degradation. After some time, you still feel it, and you want to quit them, but you don't just go back to your original deficiencies. These deficiencies become dozens or even hundreds of times worse. And believe me, you will need much more. Strength, money, determination, not just yours, but also from those around you. You will have to adjust your work. In other words, you will have to put in much more effort to get rid of these pills that solve absolutely nothing. They solve nothing in a person's life. Drugs are always an emergency measure. Right now, it hurts, right now. Some kind of shock state. It's instantaneous and moreover, so limited that if a person can't tolerate pain at all, this will turn them into a drug addict. This is not secret information. There are people who come out of intensive care unable to tolerate pain anymore, and they have become addicts. So drugs are a very short period. You can't use psychoactive substances and stay healthy. And if you're still hesitating whether to go to a psychiatrist or not, the first thing you need to do is find out what deficiencies you have. Find out what deficiencies your child has. If your child is autistic, then a psychoactive poison will not make them smart, healthy, or uninhibited. Any psychoactive poison will only destroy them. Because drugs are never ever the solution to your problems. And if you do finally decide to quit using drugs for good, you need to gather a truly tremendous amount of inner strength, especially spiritual strength. You really need to have a very deep understanding, a completely serious and thorough understanding of exactly what is happening to your physical body and your mind right now. You need to have very strong nerves so as not to be frightened by these bouts of fear. And I want to tell you, everything is solved much more easily if you don't go to a psychiatrist, but instead find out what is causing your unpleasant mental state and address that problem. And your life gets better. This was Sofya Dorinskaya with you. All the best. Goodbye.